As you probably guessed from the title, we will be making this fall brick path today. I will be going through the entire process from beginning to end. Let's get to it. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to go to acpatterns.com and select the editor. And you're going to go down to where it says New Leaf, New Horizons and set that toggle over to New Horizons. It's going to give you an error message saying that you can't get a QR code from that, so you won't be able to use the picture. And that's fine because that's not what we're trying to do. We're just trying to get a color palette. So a lot of times if I'm not familiar with the colors that I'm going to use, like these warm brick tones, I will use this tool in order to find some realistic brick colors, and I'll just upload a picture of a brick path just like this. And I didn't end up going with this one, so there's a disclaimer in advance, but this is basically what I will do. I will put a picture up there. I'll select a tiny portion of it that seems to have a wide variation of colors, and I will let it generate a photo for me. It doesn't matter that this doesn't look good and this isn't usable, because the only thing that really matters is this color palette on the top. Because the color palettes are not so easy to program in Animal Crossing, I just go ahead and I go up here and I write all of these values down for what the system came up with, and I go ahead and I go back to my Animal Crossing design editor and I plug in those values, and at least it gives me a starting point. These may or may not be the actual colors that I use, but they're pretty close. I find that a lot of times in New Horizons, when I plug them in exactly, once I place them down on the floor, they're just a little bit too light, so I always end up darkening them 2 spaces, but I do get the basic values for the vividness and the hues, and that seems to be the hardest part to figure out anyway. So what we're going to do is we're going to make our palette just a neutral color. It doesn't really matter which one, just something that's going to contrast from the line color enough that you'll be able to see it. You're going to count 8 spaces down. On the 8th space, you're going to put your vertical lines. Now your bricks need to be 16 spaces wide, or 15 spaces wide if you don't count the line. The line has to go on the 16th space. And when you break them up on the sides, it doesn't matter how you do it, as long as the 2 end spaces, when there's a brick in the middle, equal 16 squares or 16 spaces. So then we're going to fill in our bricks with the main colors, whichever color you decide you want to use. In this palette, there is a main color and then there's a shade lighter and a shade darker for every tone that I use for each brick. And we're going to use the highlights on the top and the dark and the shadows on the bottom. And we're going to just add some texture, make it look natural. So I will be quiet and let you guys watch me do that. As always, when naming my design, I am oh so creative, and it is called Brick Path. So I think I put a C to make it the center piece. That is the main piece. This is the one we're gonna work off of. So hopefully you guys like it. I am just gonna lay it out around me. I'm gonna copy and paste it into all of the squares that I need it in. I did end up making everything about 2 shades darker, And that really doesn't matter. I just liked it better. I felt like it was a little more fall. So what I'm doing is I'm starting to make the edge pieces. They're kind of all the same. So you start from 8 spaces out, and you consider your light source where your light source is. For me, it is on the top left. Yeah, it is coming from the top left. So my top values are going to be lighter than the values closer to the bottom of the border. The same with the way I shadowed the bricks. It's always the top left is where my highlights are, and the bottom and to the right are going to be where my shadows are. So that pretty much kind of holds true in how I'm making these borders. And I'm just adding some texture and working around the circle. So I started at the top and the top right corner, and I went back and added some extra little details just for fun. I guess no reason actually. So I just wanted some extra little highlights in there. I felt like it would look better. So now I'm going to do the bottom left corner, and the bottom is the only way that it's going to work a little bit differently, where there's going to be an extra little bit, and you'll see that in just a second. What I've been doing, and you can do this or not do it, it depends on if you mind if it repeats a little bit or not, is that I kind of copy a side and then I paste it onto the bottom so that half of it's already done for me. So on the bottom, what I did is that little lip where in the border where it's only 1 pixel in between the 2 darker edges of it, I went ahead and made it 3, because the bottom, the way the bricks are, is the little grout line is right there, and it would make it extra long. Otherwise you'd have to make the brick longer, and that didn't look good as well. So the way I got out of that was just kind of by using that as the edging of the brick and just extending it down 1 little piece. It ended up not making too much of a difference in the design, so I'm not mad at it. I think it looks fine. If it really bothers you, then I'm sure you can find a workaround. But for me, I felt like it looked okay. So I'm going to let you watch me do all of these edges, and I'll come back to you when we're working on the diagonal pieces. Okay, and actually, so I didn't explain, I'm sorry, how wide this was. So for the outer edge of the edging, it is 5 spaces, and that is just a light shadow to kind of make it look like it's 3-dimensional and it pops out. Just consider where your light source is and make that the lightest part, and then the darkest part, you know, on the other side, so because that would be in the shadow. And then so that is 5 spaces, and then there is 1 like cut off like grout line, and then there's 1 tiny little lip of edging, because I noticed in borders in regular sidewalks that always seems to kind of be there. I liked it there, so I put it there. You can actually omit it entirely, but the whole thing takes 8 spaces. So what I did was I took the regular brick path, obviously, and I just cleared out half of it on a diagonal, and I started making my border that way, the very same way that I worked the border on the corner pieces, except that I go all the way straight down. It is diagonally also 5 spaces. I ended up renaming it and going back in because I wanted to see how it was looking in the little area that I set up right there really quick. And that is absolutely okay to do. I could have cut that out, but I wanted you guys to see that I do check on these every now and again if I'm feeling just a little bit unsure. So it's basically the same as the edges, except that in that little lip, I put 2 spaces every single time, because at a diagonal, it doesn't show up if you don't. So it is always too wide or too diagonal. I take it from the corner pieces so that I can line up the main lines. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but it's kind of how I know where it's supposed to end. without actually having to go and look, and where those dark pieces are. So it gives me a sense of that. And then I just go one extra in. And that actually seems to work. It provides the most seamless transition, because I'm always concerned about transitions. These pieces have to connect to each other. I always connect every single piece to each other before I set a pattern off into the public. I do test them in all scenarios, and I set them out and I use them, and I make sure that I'm okay with how they hook up together. So that is something I also definitely recommend, is just going through and checking your patterns. Don't get frustrated. Anything you do can be fixed. These can always be erased. You can take your main one and completely copy over it again and start over again. I've done this brick path a lot now, but there were many failures along the way that never made it to the public, and that's totally fine. It is okay to experiment and learn how to use this tool. It's not like a standard drawing tool like a Apple with an Apple Pencil, where it's just a little bit easier. There's no color picker on this, and it's a little bit more challenging. So we're gonna go ahead and do the inner corner edges that go with the diagonal pieces in order to make it a seamless transition. These are just the same as the diagonal edges. It's just that you're taking the 8 spaces at the very corner of the main brick path, and you're going to just kind of work the diagonal path in that tiny little area. If you like content like this, be sure to like and subscribe. I will be coming out with a full tutorial similar to this once a month, but every Friday I do put up custom design code little shorts, just some quick draw throughs that maybe you can follow along to. But I will be making a full descriptive tutorial similar to this at least once a month out of those Friday videos. So I hope you enjoyed. I really enjoyed making it, and I hope to see you again. Bye.